Hello. I'm going to use this video to explain a little bit about the Odyssey as a text and about the Invocation of the Muse. If you already watched the chapter 1 video, I talk about the Invocation of the Muse in that chapter. All right, this is the version of the book we're reading. This is a prose version, meaning it's told like a narrative, like a story. That's different from how the Odyssey was originally published or shared as an oral story with the Greeks. But in chapter 1 of our version, you'll see the Invocation of the Muse is this first little paragraph, okay? Invocation is like a word that means prayer, and the Muse was a goddess. There were 9 muses. They were considered to be the daughters of Zeus, and each muse was responsible for a different aspect of the arts. So you had the muse of poetry, who this is referring to. You would have had the muse of music, the muse of dance, the muse of painting, all these different goddesses that were responsible for different elements of the arts. And because Greeks, the ancient Greeks were a very religious culture, they valued the arts very highly, including drama and dance. Every time that they would go to tell this very famous story of their culture, they would have to say a prayer, kind of like people say a prayer before they eat or they say a prayer in church. And that prayer was called the Invocation of the Muse. You would invoke, right, call upon the power of this goddess to help you tell your story, to help you share this art well, right? Because again, the ancient Greeks believed that they couldn't do anything without the blessings and the help of their gods and goddesses. That idea, that concept of saying thanks to the gods and recognizing their essential value and importance and you being able to do what you're good at, that's one of the things that Odysseus doesn't do so well in the Odyssey, which is why he's trapped at sea. So we're going to figure out what he does wrong and who he offends as we keep reading. But I wanted to share with you the fact that this version of the Odyssey is not the original. Right? This is a simplified, storied version of what is essentially a very long, epic poem. Okay? So when we look at this version of the Odyssey, we see it reads like a storybook. Right? This is called prose. When we look at the original version of the Odyssey, when I say original, obviously it was translated in the last century. It's not the original, meaning the ancient Greek. But it's written like a poem, okay? So that first chunk here, all the way down to here, that's the Invocation of the Muse in this version. And this is the version that honors students at Woodland read. They don't read the whole thing, cover to cover. The books are like chapters, and they read a certain section of those books in the poem. But you'll notice that this is written like poetry, right? It doesn't go all the way to the end of the page. These are lines of poetry, and they follow a certain rhythm and a certain meter, particularly in the ancient Greek. So this is, what's his name? Alan Mandelbaum's translation. And then I also have here one of the most recent publications of the Odyssey that's translated by a woman named Emily Wilson. So I'm going to show you her first page and how this also looks different. She has a translator's note in the beginning, so she explains how she interpreted the ancient Greek and why her version is perhaps slightly different from other versions. She also has some really cool maps in the beginning. The world of the Odyssey. The Aegean Sea and what was called Asia Minor. And then this is her first page. All right, so she also calls them books, not chapters. It has a title, The Boy and the Goddess, right? Our version is, why am I forgetting? Athena and the Prince, right? Athena and the Prince. So the goddess is Athena and the boy is Telemachus, Prince Telemachus, son of Odysseus. He's the prince of Ithaca. But here on her first page, right, you'll see her Invocation of the Muse, right? It reads, "Tell me about a complicated man. Muse, tell me how he wandered and was lost when he had wrecked the holy town of Troy, and where he went, and who he met, the pain he suffered on the sea, and how he worked to save his life and bring his men back home. He failed. And for their own mistakes, they died. They ate the sun god's cattle, and the god kept them from home. Now, goddess, child of Zeus, tell the old story for our modern times. Find the beginning, right? So the poet would put this out, right? Find the beginning, Muse. Help me tell the story. And then the poet would launch into the beginning of the tale. In the Alan Mandelbaum version, I'm going to read that one to you. I love this one. It says, Muse, tell me of the man of many wiles, the man who wandered many paths of exile after he sacked Troy's sacred citadel. He saw the cities, mapped the minds of many, and on the sea his spirit suffered every adversity to keep his life intact, to bring his comrades back. In that last task, his will was firm and fast, and yet he failed. He could not save his comrades. Fools, they foiled themselves. They ate the oxen of the sun, the herd of Helios Hyperion. The Lord of Light requited their transgressions, and he took away the day of their return. Muse, tell us of these matters. Daughter of Zeus, my starting point is any point you choose. Right? So again, the poet is going to offer up this prayer, invoke the power of the goddess, and then the goddess is ultimately going to sort of speak through him so that he can share this story with his audiences. The people who in ancient Greece would have gone around and told the story of the Odyssey, of Odysseus's attempt to return home from Troy, the poets who would have gone around and told the story of the Iliad, right, which is the story of part of the Trojan War. The Trojan War lasted 10 years. The Iliad takes about 2 years of time within that. But those men, they were always men, they were called bards, right? And so in the Odyssey, you're going to meet Phemius, the bard, in chapter 1, and he comes to the halls of Odysseus's castle to entertain the men and women who are there, even though Odysseus isn't. And he's going to sing the songs of the Trojan War. And essentially, he's telling the stories of what the men and the gods and the goddesses experienced there. And he would have, before starting to sing, right, or tell the story, he would have invoked the Muse. You see the invocation of the Muse at the beginning of all classical epics. And when we talk about classical, we're talking about the classical period, which is like ancient Greece and ancient Rome. All right, I hope this gives you a little bit more insight into why the Odyssey is called an epic, right? Why it's called an epic poem, and how your version is a slightly different version and tells it more like a narrative or a story. I'll reference back to these and read you other excerpts and share some of these with you on Schoology so that you can do some comparisons and see how this is a really great version. Like, it really covers all of the important things that we need, and it even attempts to pull in some of the imagery that the ancient Greek did. But I definitely want you to be able to see the contrast and see the difference and experience this version as well. But probably many of you are grateful that you're not reading this really long version. You might have to in college, so get ready for that. Okay, up next, I don't remember, but soon. Bye.